So the other day, a client came up to me and said something that he had heard on the Andrew Huberman podcast related to his diet. And this is something that we had been talking about for several months, and something that I had been telling him that I suggested. But since he heard it on the Andrew Huberman podcast, it was solidified, it was certain, it was real, and it was something that he then took serious, and which is good. Any way that you can make progress and get towards a healthy track, I'm all for. But it made me start thinking about, where we get our information. And then it just so happened that the next day, another one of my clients told me that she was adjusting her diet. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Where did you get that from?" It's certainly not something that I had mentioned before, and not something that you had, mentioned any interest in before either. So where is this idea coming from? And sure enough, it was from the same podcast. So really started thinking a lot about how people are collecting information. And it seems nowadays the podcasts like the Joe Rogan show and the Andrew Huberman podcast are go-to sources for people to collect their nutrition and lifestyle and workout advice. And I think it's important that we kind of get a little bit of perspective on what these platforms really are. Somebody like Andrew Huberman, who is a specialist and extremely knowledgeable about neuroscience and has built a platform where he's able to bring experts on who can share their insights and share their expertise on their own individual fields. That's what it is, right? It's a new way of collecting information. He's bringing on professionals in other fields who are giving their opinions and their knowledge. And I just think it's important that we have a little bit of perspective on what is exactly happening. Because it used to be, when I was younger, I had to go to a library and scan the binders of the books and find the right book that's related to the topic that I'm looking for and open the book up. And the thing that happened then was I would have to read the whole book, or at the very, very least, read an entire chapter. And what that allowed me to do was gain context into what the author was telling me, or what the author's research would tell me. And there was no such thing as a 15-second bookmarked clip highlighting one or two sentences from an expert. And I think that's what's happening now, is people are getting that information not by listening to the 3-hour podcast that Joe Rogan has or that Andrew Huberman has, but by a short TikTok or Instagram 15-second clip that's been cut out from that podcast. And even if that information is right, even if that information is correct and 100% good, it doesn't mean that you have a full context enough to understand it. And that can kind of become dangerous if we lose that context and we live in facts only or clips only. And I'll give an example. So let's say, for example, somebody goes onto a podcast and says that warming up is important, right? Which it is. So you get that 15-second clip saying how important it is to warm up. Then you have a client coming into a trainer like me and saying, "Oh, warming up is so important. I need to spend half of the workout warming up." Now I, who educated in exercise specifically and have been working in exercise-related fields specifically for nearly 20 years, say that what's important is to warm up for our specific exercise. And so therefore, if we're going to do a bench press, doing something like a push-up would be beneficial. It doesn't mean we need to go run on a treadmill for half an hour or do 20 burpees or stretch for 20 minutes. It means that we have a goal in our warming up. And that's kind of all beside the point, whether or not we're warming up. The program is not the point of what I'm trying to talk about here. What I'm trying to talk about here is the danger of taking a 15-second clip from a podcast and using that as an end-all be-all source of information. So when you listen to these podcasts, when you watch these shows, think about the big picture. Think about what is the overall goal. Sometimes they are trying to sell something. Sometimes the person on the show has a product they're trying to sell. I'm not saying this is the whole case. I'm not saying that they're all doing this. But it is known that they have oftentimes professionals come onto these shows who are pitching supplements or exercise products or some other lifestyle product. So just think, is that swaying what's being told to me? And I think the second thing to take into consideration is, like I said, the context. What is being said, but really what is the big picture of the message that expert is trying to show? And again, I'm all for the transition of this information platform about how we're receiving our information. Of course, it's much more efficient to have something shot over to us in 15-second clips, and that's great. And it saves a lot of time of going to the libraries if you're a kid. But you do lose the sense of context and what the big picture is. So, I just think it is important at the end of the day to not let any one person or any one platform be your source of all information. For example, like I said, people come to me because I have a certification and experience in exercise, right? You're not going to come to me for rehab. You're not going to come to me for nutrition. Although I do have the education in these things, I do have the experience in these things, I don't have the certification in these things. And that is a critical point. Just as a rehab professional, a physical therapist will have information and knowledge on how to train somebody, it doesn't mean they have the certification to do it. And I do think, like I said, it's great that he gets experts in different fields to come on and talk and educate us. I just think that it's important to know that they're using his platform and that information is not necessarily coming from him. It's coming from through his platform that he's built through a lot of hard work. And I do admire that. So I wanted to come on because it's been something that's happened a couple times in the last week. Like I said, clients are taking information from that podcast and taking it as a holy grail of health knowledge. So thanks again for tuning in, and talk to you again soon. Bye.